Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Maybe.
There we go. Live and direct.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
As KRS-One would say, live and direct.
There you go. Old school.
Uh-huh.
Boogie Down Productions. In the house.
Oh, yeah.
I saw I think that was the last hip hop show I saw was KRS-One.
Oh, yeah? Yeah. Recently or?
No.
Yeah.
No, the Berkeley Memorial Theater, God, in like auditorium, is it called? Which is actually at my high school. It's at Berkeley High.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a big, whatever, they have a big public venue in the high school. So he was there. This would have been in the early 90s. And during the show, halfway first, number one, the sound was so terrible it wasn't worth going.
Yeah,
hip hop is horrendous live. I've been to maybe 4 or 5 hip hop shows live, big ones, and they were all terrible, horrendous. And I loved the acts too, but the music was just ridiculous live. Number 2, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes into the show, KRS-One is like yelling. He's pointing into the crowd and he's yelling and he stops. He throws the mic down. And I think he walked off the stage. And at that point, like cops and EMS workers started moving toward the middle of the crowd and they brought in a stretcher. And then they pulled this body up out of the crowd and put it on the stretcher and then wheeled it out of the auditorium. He had been stabbed. Somebody had been stabbed in the crowd.
Wow.
I hope he's alive. I never heard I should look into that, but yeah, I never heard the outcome of that. But
that's at the Stop the Violence hip hop show. That's
right. Yeah. And this was back then they would have called it a conscious rapper.
Yeah.
This KRS-One is sort of I was gonna say he's one of the intellectuals of the hip hop world. He is. I mean, and not into bitches and niggas and killing and all that shit. Was always talking about police brutality and whatever. But so this is my racist announcement to the white nation: don't go to hip hop shows, and most importantly, don't let your kids go to hip hop shows.
Yeah, Jim Goad.
Really, it's true.
Jim Goad, from his days as a hip hop or a music journalist, he interviewed all the great rappers from the early '90s around then.
Oh yeah, right.
KRS-One was the only one who showed up on time for the interview.
That's right. I remember that. I remember that well. Yeah, I haven't checked in on Jim in a while. It's funny that I've become friends with all those right wingers over the years recently, having lived my whole life as a communist until maybe 10 years ago. And now all my friends, well, it's changing now, but I developed a lot of friends on the right, many of whom I've lost as friends, and some of whom I now despise. But some, like Jim, I still think, have a lot to say about liberalism.
Yeah.
Have a lot to say about the dominant culture we live in. I've been thinking about this today because in the last, 5 months now, and you've seen this with me, Trump's actions have rubbed most of my nerves raw. And some of those nerves might be communist nerves. That might be some hard wiring from the past, but I don't think so. I mean, I don't know, whatever they are. I mean, he has. And so I have, as you know, on this show, I have been talking pretty consistently for most of the last 5 months against Trump after having spent 10 solid freaking years defending bro and his movement, MAGA. And you won't find another left libertarian in the world, I don't think, who has called for the release of the J6 prisoners, who has called them political prisoners, who has and I put this in a tweet very clearly at the time, I understand entirely why they stormed the Capitol, and basically I was in solidarity with them. I could go on. The things I have said in favor of I had how many MAGA major people, some Trump administration people on Unregistered on the podcast. And I was on their side. And I still kind of am. I mean, we are now, my point was that we are now, and I know I'm not the only one. I mean, I'm thinking of several people I know who are journalists who were politically aligned with all that. basically they were like ex-liberals or leftists who hated what wokeness had done to the left, and by 2015 we're sick of it and done with it, and saw Trump differently than we were trained to see him.
Mm-hmm.
And for 10 years, and I mean it, there's a cohort. I mean, it's not just me, but there were, I don't know, I'm not going to name. Leighton Woodhouse is one, Michael Schellenberger's another. I don't know, there's quite a few, who were of that ilk, who were like former leftists who came to hate the left. And part of that transformation was to see Trump not the way the left saw him, which meant not to see him as the God King, as clearly many people in MAGA do, but to see him, well, at that time, before 2025, we saw him, and I think this is true of all of us in that category, saw him as just simply not a significant threat to anything we care about. We didn't think he was going to, we would joke about concentration camps for gays. We would joke about, not joke, but we, sort of semi-joke about, he would unleash the cops on blacks, and the cops would be shooting black people in the streets. And we sort of poo-pooed a lot of that stuff. And we also then, of course, supported a lot of his critiques of the Democratic Party and the left, which were and still are largely correct from my point of view. And so, I mean, I've been spending so much time in the last 6 months just trying to figure out what my views are of Trump and MAGA, because I was pretty consistent and clear in my own mind about it until January of this year. But since he took office again in this new administration, I mean, I'm mostly horrified. Mostly. I don't think it has risen to the level yet, although we'll see this Saturday. We got to talk about this coming Saturday. Oh boy. But yet of Franklin Roosevelt levels of fascism. I think I'm going to write a piece, by the way, pretty soon on this, comparing Trump to FDR, because I think that's actually the most apt comparison. There are certainly differences, but I think that, and I'd love someone to ask Trump about his attitudes about Roosevelt. Steve Bannon has said many times that FDR is really the guiding light of the MAGA movement. And if you think about it, that's exactly right, I suppose. I mean, I should say he's the guiding light of the mainstream of the MAGA movement, which is not anti-imperialist. Roosevelt was a full-blown fascist, and his policies were, as I argue in Renegade History and elsewhere, inarguably fascistic at the very least. Especially in the first 3 years of the New Deal. There's no question. It was a corporatism absolutely equivalent to the economic models in Italy and Germany at the time. Hitler and Mussolini were praising Roosevelt to the heavens for years until Roosevelt went to war with them in the late 30s. But for years, when the three of them were just running their countries without feeling the need to go to war with one another, Mussolini and Hitler, and again, this is all in Renegade History, were just, I mean, not praising, they were exalting Roosevelt and saying he was one of their own. And the Gestapo newspaper was talking about how the New Deal was absolutely akin to Nazism. All true. Anyway, and there's a few things in the Roosevelt New Deal era, which doesn't end with Roosevelt. It goes really into the current age of the Democratic Party. That is really the founding of the current Democratic Party, is the New Deal and Franklin Roosevelt of the 1930s. And we've all heard many Democrats, right, talk about how we need a New Deal, not just the Green New Deal. Bernie Sanders talks about the New Deal and Franklin Roosevelt every damn day. The militaristic language of Roosevelt, the martial language. He talked about making Americans into a great army. This is before World War II. This is during the Depression. A great army to cure the economic crisis of the time. He talked about national discipline. He talked about national order. He locked up political dissidents by the thousand. by the thousands before and during the war. If you spoke out against World War II, against American entry into World War II, you were put in prison. There were 2,000 American citizens who were put in prison for opposing World War II. Before then, what did Roosevelt do against the Bonus March? Or not, sorry, that was someone else. But he certainly launched the FBI. Hoover and the FBI had teeth before the 1930s. But under Roosevelt, again, this is not just my book and Renegade History, but it's there. But in their entire books devoted to this subject, the Federal Bureau of Investigation was launched in the 1900s, but it was a minor law enforcement agency with limited funding and not a lot of personnel until the 30s, until Roosevelt. And Roosevelt gave J. Edgar Hoover carte blanche and massive resources and the go-ahead to conduct all these surveillance programs on all sorts of American citizens, to lock up people without habeas corpus, without due process, who the U.S. suspected of being subversives, etc. I mean, the guy was a fascist, but the what made him a fascist really was the cult of personality, the very concerted attempt to, not concerted, successful attempt to seduce Americans into internalizing the righteousness of his regime. My father was one of millions of examples of this. I bet everyone watching this, if you're an American and have an American granddad, you probably know what I'm talking about, or even an American father. An amazingly successful cult of personality. Thousands of workers died building the public works projects of the New Deal, the dams, the bridges, the roads, the trails in forests, building the enormous buildings they built during that time. Great. We love these buildings. Some of them are quite lovely, like Coit Tower in San Francisco. You can see a monument to the New Deal inside the Coit Tower. Does anybody not like the Coit Tower? I love it. I could see it out of my bedroom window when I was a kid. I love the Coit Tower. But, same with Germany. The what's the really fast freeway in your home country called again? The Autobahn. The Autobahn was built by the Nazis. Much of the irrigation systems that have fed the farms of Germany since the 1930s were built by Hitler and the Nazis.
Hey, I bought my Volkswagen before I knew he was a fascist.
I know.
I bought my Volkswagen early. Yeah.
That's prudent fascism. That's what it's called. Yes. So, I mean, a lot of that stuff Trump clearly admires in the abstract. And I'm not saying he's identified Nazi and Italian policy specifically as admirable, but he has most certainly made a lot of noises about how he loves the idea of public works. And he tried it hard. Remember, one of his very first, initiatives in his first term was that massive public works idea. Remember that? It was a big deal. What did he even have a name? It didn't get through Congress, but he was really, it might have been Bannon's idea. I bet it was. Remember that? It was going to be a humongous public works project where they're going to employ
I know Bannon's talked about infrastructure for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Bannon is totally a New Dealer. Steve Bannon is the New Deal. This is what people need to understand. I can't think of any daylight really between Steve Bannon's thinking and Franklin Roosevelt's thinking. That would be a great subject, by the way, to talk about. And I bet you Steve Bannon would agree with me on that. I've heard him multiple times praising Roosevelt and the New Deal to the heavens, as I said. So now, how do you get an entire large nation of people to not just willingly, but enthusiastically put on uniforms with a national flag on it, knowing that their boss is now the president of the United States, literally, the ultimate chain of command finished with Roosevelt, and are going to dig trenches and haul bricks and climb up the sides of buildings and build the motherfucking Hoover Dam? 100 men died. Yeah, 100. 100 men died building the Hoover Dam. That was a WPA project. How are you going to convince, and you needed to convince millions and most Americans, a majority of Americans, how are you going to convince them that this is awesome? Not just necessary, but like awesome. And so what you have to do is you have to institute, and he began this on the campaign trail in 1932, before there was a New Deal, before Roosevelt was famous, before he was president. In his rhetoric on the campaign trail in 32, it was just martial rhetoric. We are a nation. We are an army. We're going to build a citizen army, and we're going to go to war against our economic problems, against our social problems. And he talked relentlessly, and all of his chief advisors, and again, this is all in Renegade history, Rexford Tugwell, Raymond Moley, etc. I mean, they talked in explicitly fascistic language. They were open admirers of Mussolini. There were 6 members of Roosevelt's cabinet who I can name who passed around copies, not of Mein Kampf, but of Mussolini's writings, who were openly enthusiastic. The head of the WP, the head of the NRA, which was the most important New Deal project, that's kind of, they ran much of the economy at the time. He was a massive, open, public admirer of Mussolini, Hugh Johnson. There was this constant rhetoric, and this is what differentiated the Democrats, interestingly, from the Republicans who preceded them, right? The 20s were the Republican presidents, who we all think are terrible pieces of shit. Roosevelt's the real hero. Amazingly, or not, Roosevelt was the one, as have Democrats generally. Think of Kennedy, think of Obama, maybe Clinton too. They're the ones who have been able to convince a majority of Americans to be patriotic, because they get the liberals to be patriotic. Most of the conservatives, the Republicans, are going to be sort of automatically patriotic no matter who the president is. But liberals are the ones on the fence about wearing the flag, flying the flag. It's been the Democrat liberals, the cool dudes, the coolest dudes. Franklin Roosevelt, John Kennedy, and Barack Obama have, how many Democratic women have masturbated to those 3 men? Let's get down to business here. No, I mean that totally sincerely. I'm sorry. Are we laughing at Thad for saying that? What was one of the big stories during the early Obama administration? The New York Times, New York Magazine, the New Yorker, LA Magazine would write these long features about how women had sexual fantasies about Barack Obama. White women. Doesn't matter what color, but many. John F. Kennedy. Do you think many liberal women have had sexual fantasies about? I don't know about Roosevelt. They kept the fact secret that he was a cripple in a wheelchair. So American women didn't know that he couldn't stand up and probably had no feeling below his waist. But I'll bet you anything that many did. And once you have the wives, you're done. You're good.
Well, the press also suppressed that JFK and Obama were homosexuals. So there's some consistency here.
So that's reason number 1 that Trump will not dominate America the way that those 3 did. Mm-hmm. He never got the liberal women. In fact, they hate his guts. They want to burn him alive. I mean, they think he's disgusting. So he's not. So that's the good news. In a sense, if you're with me on the fact that Trump is, I've said, he's not a fascist quite. He's an authoritarian, most certainly and definitely. Do you know what he said fucking today about the protesters on Saturday? Not even the rioters in LA. Do you know what he said today about what's going to happen? He's doing this military parade on Saturday.
Yeah.
This Saturday is going to be lit, man. If you're into big, grand, authoritarian politics and street riots and cops shooting people in the streets and dictators being celebrated by marches of tanks in the Saturday is the shit. We're going to have a North Korean Saturday. It's going to be so dope. Do you know what he said today about it? Wait, let me just finish.
Okay.
I know you're going to defend him, but let me just get this out. I'll give you the floor. I promise.
All right.
And he said it twice. This is not just a slip of the tongue. He's sitting at his desk in the Oval Office, and the reporter asked him about this coming Saturday. And he said, what's the exact wording? Someone put it in the chat. The exact wording. Oh my God.
Oh, I looked this up earlier.
If protesters show up, we will meet them with force. He didn't say violent protesters. He didn't say criminal protesters. He didn't say illegal protesters. He said protesters, and he said it twice with no modifier, no qualifier. If
very big
protesters,
force, very big force,
very big, very big force, and it's a military parade where the most force on Earth has ever been assembled. We'll be in Washington, D.C. You've seen the tanks rolling in on the trains. My God. So for the president of the United States to tell all of us, protesters, not violent, not criminal, not illegal, any protester, he said it twice, who is there will be met with, say it again?
Very big force. Very big force.
Bigly, very big force. So that was funny as fuck 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 years ago when Trump was out of power, or when he was president, he had no power. But now that Trump has power, and have you noticed how he's seducing the military? Well, these speeches at West Point and the Academy, and just now at Fort Bragg, and then of course Hegseth is all about filleting all the cadets, all the younger servicemen, to make sure that they are all totally loyal to Trump. Dude, and by the way, that's a recipe for, if you have the lion's share of any military in any country devoted in that kind of way to the head of state, yes, that is what the third world has been all about, guys. Like, that's all the coups, all the nasty coups and revolutions and civil wars that we have all read about and heard about across the third world for 50, 60, 70 years now. That's the main story. And this is non-controversial. The head of state, whether it was Pinochet in Chile or Somoza in Nicaragua or any of these mass murderers, all of them developed very close personal relationships with military servicemen, even at the lower levels. They made sure to develop a cult of personality and cultivate profound loyalty from the ranks. And so just think about it. You're all those 20-year-olds and 22-year-old dudes who are in the military, and what kinds of dudes generally are in the military? Are they likely to join the cult of personality of Trump? Yes, we know they have already. We know that the giant majority of service members are Trump supporters, and not just supporters, but maybe his most loyal. And the way that the Fort Bragg troops were chanting along with him, and that during that speech, what's funny is there's nothing illegal about what he's doing, Trump, in doing this and cultivating a cult following in the military. Someone challenged me on that. Has Trump cultivated a cult following in the military? Yes or no? Of course he has. Of course he has. There's no question a majority of men in uniform and women in uniform too, currently in the US military, are fanatics for Donald Trump. And many of them are willing to do what? For causes they love. That's the whole thing about being in the military. You've kind of announced that you're willing to die for a cause other than yourself. Not saying that every single military member is ready to walk into gunfire to save the country, but clearly, right? Everybody knows that's the deal. You have to be at least willing to do that for your country, but you know that many servicemen truly are fanatics. I bet so many people watching this were in that position. Many of my best friends were like that when they were 22. They signed up for the military in 2001, 2002, 2003, and they were all about it, and they were ready to go hurl their bodies into IEDs to protect our country, blah, 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 right? So yeah, think about that, right? In 2003, was there a cult of personality around George Bush and the U.S. military? I don't think so. I mean, they kind of liked him, but they didn't give a shit.
Post 9/11, there was a little bit, but
Ish, hardly compared to this. I'd say only under Reagan was it comparable, but Reagan, Ronald Reagan, man, he is looking like an anti-imperialist these days compared to the presidents we've had, Democrat and Republican, since his ass. Reagan was highly restrained, and the Caspar Weinberger doctrine, the Colin Powell doctrine, which I've talked about. That's another subject I need to write about. That was, goddamn, the golden age for anti-war people like me, which is incredible. Because in the 80s, that's all we cared about was hating Ronald Reagan and calling him a warmonger. And he was in many ways. But my God, compared to these freaks, he really was. He was the most restrained, I'd say, non-imperialist of all the American presidents, certainly in my lifetime, but I think since the 30s.
We've talked about this, and I think it's from the Henry Kissinger doctrine of having your military actions be small and able to be accomplished with overwhelming force immediately, with actual outcomes in mind, as opposed to decades-long nation building.
Yeah, the difference, the only split in American foreign policy, which is significant, but I suppose if you're in one of these countries that's been bombed relentlessly, it doesn't matter to you. But the only split, and it's been only about a 20 to 30 year split, has been between the realists like Kissinger and the so-called idealists like Woodrow Wilson, Franklin Roosevelt, John F. Kennedy, Barack Obama, George Bush, which is one you could say between authoritarianism. We're interested in national American strength, and we're going to fuck up anybody who gets in the way of that. Like if we want oil fields in Iraq, we're going to fucking bomb your ass over there. If we're mad at you because some pirate off the coast of Africa attacked one of our ships, we will annihilate those dudes. That's John McCainism. John McCain and the sort of what I would call authoritarian realists, I suppose, in American foreign policy have truly, and I mean this, and I've said this before, it's true. I mean, they're too dumb to be imperialists. To be a true imperialist, you have to really understand these countries. To be a neoconservative imperialist, those cats who are they? They're all professors and they're all intellectuals. They really know about what goes on inside of Iraq. They really get it. They take terrible positions, but like their knowledge is equivalent to mine, or experts on Iraq politics. So anyway, go ahead. You were going to say something.
I don't want to get too in the weeds on this, but John McCain said something really smart, which is like one of the few substantive things that I remember from the 2008 election, which was, I think it was the third debate. Obama was talking about pulling out of Afghanistan, I think, or he was talking about winning Afghanistan, that he was going to pull out of Iraq and win Afghanistan, that Afghanistan was winnable, and there was all this. And John McCain said, "You don't know anything about this region. Afghanistan is the graveyard of empires." Alexander the Great
that was McCain.
Yeah.
I forgot that. Mm-hmm.
Alexander the Great couldn't conquer it, and our project is going to have to be at least a century if we're going to do anything meaningful there.
Point made.
John McCain was totally in favor of being there for a century, which was widely unpopular.
Right.
But he was correct in that if you want to accomplish what you want to accomplish, you need to be there forever.
Yeah, I mean, so what's really happened for more than 100 years is that since at least the Spanish-American War, you could argue even earlier than that, but certainly since then, has been that the imperialists, and when we say neocon, that's what we now mean, by the way. Those are kind of synonyms, meaning like the overt, explicit imperialist and the people who understand what that means and embrace it, right? They want an American empire. They don't use that term because they know it will hurt them politically, but they clearly want that. And the neocons just represent that. There are many kinds of imperialists. Neocons are just the ones we know about, right? But like Tony Blinken's an imperialist. Barack Obama was imperialist. Bill Clinton was an imperialist. What's really been going on, I think one could say this is one way of looking at it for 130 years-ish, has been that the imperialists in American politics have just convinced the knuckleheads like John McCain, who hate America's enemies and have this ridiculous nationalist pride, to go along with them. Hey guys, there's these. Did you hear about the Iranians? They said they called us the Great Satan. And John McCain sitting in Glendale, Arizona is like, what the fuck? Let's go kill them. Because he spent time in that Vietnam prison. And he was like bursting an artery ever since over it. Now, which I get, but then again, he should have been shot down. He should have been imprisoned. And if they had killed his ass, it would have been cause for national celebration. He was bombing civilians from an airplane. And by the way, John McCain volunteered to do that. He was a volunteer. He enlisted. And then he volunteered, which you can do, to fly those bombing missions over North Vietnam. He bombed cities in North Vietnam. He killed children. They should have tortured his ass more. Hung him out to dry. That's what we would have done to him if he were bombing children in America flying for the North Vietnamese Air Force. Wouldn't we? Yeah, we would. I would. Mr. Pacifist over here. Yeah, no, for sure. I'm killing anybody who kills our children. And I'm doing it gleefully. Yeah, no, that's John McCain, one of the greatest war criminals in history. But he wasn't an imperialist, which makes him much less dangerous. He will only kill, 50 or 60 of your peasants in your jungle over there. Terrible thing. But he won't kill your whole country. The imperialists do that. The argument that the neocon imperialists have made for 120-ish years to those guys is simply this. The world is full of our enemies. They hate us. Number one. Number two, they have exotic, unassimilable cultures. And they are trying to infiltrate our country with their culture and change our culture. First, it was the communists, which was actually true. The communists actually were trying to change American culture. Then I suppose you could say it was the hippies and the black nationalist movements. And it was also sort of true. And then they came to the Muslims finally. In the 80s and 90s, it started, and that's not true.
Well, that was HW.
It's so not true.
No
Muslim gives a shit about changing American culture. Yeah. That is just nowhere. The communists absolutely did, but the Muslims don't. They just don't care.
Shoot. I don't want to get... We're like almost halfway through the show. And,
yeah, but we've covered news.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just spent 40 minutes calling Trump a fascist.
Wait, hold on. By now.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think fascism is dead. I think it's something that is reserved to the annals of history. I think it's something reserved.
I'm not, though. Yeah. Wait, actually, I'm sorry. That was my fault. I wasn't. Yeah. It was a sort of nuanced argument, actually. I was trying to make the argument that Trump is still not a fascist. He's an authoritarian. Mm-hmm. Fascism, the thing about FDR is that FDR was a fascist in that he, as I said, much of his program was intended to have Americans internalize him as the great leader and internalize the New Deal as a virtuous initiative and internalize, most importantly, America as the great nation that is them, that to merge their identities with the nation state, which is exactly what Mussolini did and Hitler did and many other fascistic heads of state have done. Trump has not done that. Trump's not smart enough. That was my point. Trump is a McCain type. He's not smart enough to be an imperialist or a fascist, and thank God for that. Fascism requires, very sophisticated communications, which clearly Trump doesn't possess the ability for, nor do his minions. Levitt is cute and she can talk a good line, but she doesn't do that. She's not seducing people intellectually. Goebbels seduced the 10% of Germans who followed the Nazis. And by the way, it was only about 10%. But those people in Germany who were actual Nazis or sympathetic, it was a seduction. He made elaborate arguments with elaborate poetic phrasing to convince people. And, he was brilliant. Trump ain't brilliant. You got to be smart to be an imperialist or a fascist. But he is sure as fuck an authoritarian. And that seems to me to be indisputable at this point. What do you think?
I think like history puts him in this position to exercise authority, and I think, but I want to get to the news.
You're gonna.
I mean,
why are you dodging this, Michael?
I mean, is he an authoritarian? I mean, the thing is, like, let's look at something practical. For example, like the protesters are going to be met with a very big force. I think that's something that is overwhelmingly popular. I think it's said in the context of these riots that are happening in LA that everybody with a sane mind hates. Like, everybody remembers the George Floyd protests. Everybody remembers those and thinks that they were not met with enough force.
Everybody?
I think
who's everybody?
I mean, Americans, real American patriots.
You mean the people you like?
I mean, well, most.
Come on.
We've talked about this. Like, nobody likes having streets blocked. Nobody likes having businesses burnt down. Nobody likes.
Have you not seen all the people defending the riots in LA? Like,
I've seen
you don't have
Karen
to, you don't have to
Bass,
like them.
I've seen, but I mean, I've seen like the worst politicians defend them. I've seen your typical. I've seen much less support for these than I saw for the Floyd protests. I haven't seen a massive popular support for them. I've seen the usual suspects, and I've seen a lot of boomers.
Well, you don't know liberals. That's all this means. You don't know liberals.
I do know liberals, but
that's what Facebook's for. By the way, if you want to know,
I know Facebook, yeah. But
so my Facebook feed is full of defenses of the riots. There's not one of my high school or college friends is saying anything other than that.
I think polling data is pretty solidly behind Trump on this.
We don't know that yet.
Yeah, there's been. Man, I could show you some of the CNN
calling
stuff,
in the Marines to Los Angeles for those little dinky semi-riots. Those were tiny nothings compared to 92, compared to most riots in American history, compared to the Stamp Act riot in 1765, compared to the Boston riot of 1770, which became the Boston Massacre. And this is the subject of my current Substack piece, by the way, but the Boston Massacre wasn't just a massacre. It started with about 500 drunks in the street throwing bricks at the heads of soldiers, the redcoats, and spitting in their faces and calling them cunts and bitches. And then one of the rioters, these patriots, was Crispus Attucks, right? Who's in every American textbook, who's on the wall of every American high school as a great American hero, took a giant staff club that he had and smashed one of the redcoats in the head with it. And that's when they opened fire. And that was the beginning of the American Revolution. That was the founding of the American Republic. That's the most heroic moment in American history. It is precisely what is happening in Los Angeles. So I'm just wondering why we think the one is the soul of virtue and the other is the soul of evil. Sorry. I'll give you a second on that. That was heavy.
Yeah.
I'll just give you a second. I mean it, though. Wait, and that's just the beginning of American virtuous riots. There have been so many riots in American history that have produced results that we all love now. Gay rights would be one of them. I know not all of us like gay rights, but like Stonewall. Stonewall was a riot against cops. They were fighting police in the streets. And they won. And then basically the next day, gay rights were initiated across the country, and no longer were they raiding gay bars in every city. Good thing. Even if you're a homophobe, you don't want cops raiding gay bars, which was a normal thing. That's why they rioted. They fought the cops. They threw bricks. They set fires. They smashed police cars. They said all kinds of nasty things to the cops. Just like what these people in LA are doing. They won, and then we have freedom for these people who had been completely, totally oppressed. Even if you're a homophobe, gay people were absolutely, completely oppressed before 1969, before those fags fought the cops in the streets on Christopher Street in 1969. And I could go on. There's more than that. There are many, many straight up riots whose results we all now celebrate. Could talk about 92. You want to talk about 92? Rodney King riots? The worst, horrific. 60 people, something? Is it 60 people died? The rooftop Koreans, oh, they're so cool. They're so good at shooting. I agree. I'm down. Yeah. If my family owns a little shop and we're immigrants and these fucking freaks are coming in and trying to loot us for no reason whatsoever, I'm shooting them in the face too. I get it. Yeah, but that's not the big story in those riots. The big story in those riots is, number one, it was, as with most riots, by the way, from the hood, that originate in the hood in American history, going all the way back to the fucking Stamp Act, which was, Boston was a hood then. It was redcoats were forcibly quartered inside Americans' homes. You would get a notice that you had to like put these British soldiers in your house. And they were patrolling the streets like cops. 92. What was it? 5 cops, 6 cops surrounding this guy, beating the fuck out of him with sticks, with batons. And we saw the video. Everybody saw the video. He was barely moving, but they beat him so badly he was almost killed. It's state repression in every case, almost always by cops. Human beings, generally speaking, especially lower class people, really, really don't like being oppressed by cops violently, physically. And if you're simply going to work every day at the Home Depot, coming home and probably drinking some Budweiser, going to sleep and starting over the next day at Home Depot, and you have 2 jobs, 3 jobs, you work as a landscaper too, and your wife is a housekeeper, and she has to take a bus from one end of the city to the next to tend to other people's kids. And she does that, spends all day doing that. And you get busted by ICE, thrown in a van by these dipshit redneck crackers that Trump hired to do this shit. They're not even, a lot of these people have been deputized, these ICE cops, because he didn't have enough ICE cops to do this shit. And that's why they're so unprofessional. They often not even marked. They're masked. What cops are masked? They stick you in a van and then you're not on a plane to... Do you know what he's doing now? He's sending them to Libya. He's sending... My neighbors in Oakland were from Laos. He's sending Laotian immigrants, illegal immigrants, not to Laos. And why? Why Laotian immigrants? Sending them to Libya. Filipino. Oakland is full of Filipinos. He's sending some like Filipino illegal immigrants to Libya. Like, and by the way, the other thing about this, let's think about these countries that are involved here. Let's think about the countries that are involved here. Venezuela. Okay, well, the United States government for 30 years now has been waging a secret war against the Venezuelan government and an open war against the Venezuelan government. Sanctions to cut off everything, to destroy the oil economy in Venezuela Yes, I know it's a socialist country and I'm completely opposed to it. It's economically ridiculous and inefficient. I get it. But that's not the main reason that Venezuelans are in a crisis. The Soviet Union, as backwards as it was economically, didn't have people starving. It's because the United States, through various subterfuge economic campaigns, destroyed the Venezuelan economy. And that's not even really controversial anymore. I mean, that's Trump and Biden and Obama all are like proud of it. And then they knew they were doing this, so they granted this exemption to Venezuelan refugees. There was a law that I think Trump just repealed last week. But when Obama and company started to destroy the Venezuelan economy, they knew there would be refugees heading for our border because they were desperate. And so we let them in. We give them a special exemption. We let them in, and then Trump does this to them. This is about the American empire. All of this immigration stuff is about the American empire. Laos. Well, are you kidding me? We dropped bombs on that country before we slaughtered the Vietnamese.
I mean, that was Kennedy.
That was Kennedy's pet project, was Laos, and fomented a revolution and created a civil war, which killed hundreds of thousands of people in Laos and created a bunch of refugees. When they came to our country, and what have they done? They work at that incredible restaurant down the street from me. Like they make salads. Like it's ridiculous. And then, I mean, we could go on. Mexico. What did the United States do to Mexico? We never invaded. Oh, well, first of all, we did invade Mexico back in the 1840s, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the drug war. How the United States imposed prohibition and then radical enforcement of the drug war for decades. And there's many other things that, I mean, the United States has a major control of the Mexican government and its handling of this whole situation. The cartels are in large part a creation of the American empire as well. Like it's just, and these are the people we're sending back when they come to our country as refugees because they're working on because we don't like line cooks and day laborers and housekeepers and nannies. This
is where I think you're kind of missing the forest for the tree here.
All right.
On illegal immigration and the post-war consensus, because the whole idea is we bomb the third world and we import the third world. So the opposition to bombing the third world also includes an opposition to importing the third world. And limiting the scope of America, limiting what we're trying to do internationally also includes not importing the places that we bomb. Stop bombing them. Let them have their own country. Let the United States have its own country. It's a different view of the world where we don't see the entire world as ours, where we suck up cheap labor from the places that we bomb and remake the global economy based off of how we want it to look, based off of what the military industrial complex or tech companies want, but based off of ideas of national sovereignty, where we respect other people's national sovereignty and we respect our own. I've got $27 in 3 different super chats here from Posmo. If you want to call us names, please do so with a super chat.
Okay, this would be called a hostile super chat.
Yeah, hostile super chats.
It's like a hostile takeover or something. Yeah, let's see. Okay,
listen, Lolbert. Trump didn't send in the guard to rough up Angelinos for shutting down the 405. They're only there to protect federal offices and property because LA refuses, and it's all they've done. It's popular.
So I will only respond to things I haven't heard from Trump himself.
60% of Americans support bringing out the guard.
No matter how much you give us?
I've seen polls 60+%. I've seen polls in favor of what Trump's been doing. I've seen on CNN polls in favor of deportations, mass deportations, and ICE. It is around the 50 to 60% for a lot of things. And then also, there's no due process. This guy has weeks of grievances with this show here. There's no due process without an underlying substantive right. There's no substantive right for illegals to remain in America.
Okay. I guess I'm just waiting for something I haven't heard from Tom Homan.
It's Tom.
Tom Homan is, I mean, he is one of our great intellectuals. But if you're just repeating him, what's the point here? I don't.
You know this, that intellectuals are responsible for every bad idea that has ever dominated America. And
wow,
it's
you suck, Michael. You just so fucking suck. When I get like emotionally revved up, you're just like, excuse me, motherfucker. You're being contradictory with your own ideas. I'm like, all right, now what? And then I just, just everything's deflated and it sucks. All right. Anyway, wait, is that it from Posmo?
That's it from Posmo. Those are his. Yeah, but I think it is worth noting that the chat here tonight is, I mean, very much in favor. Boris put in the chat that Nixon won 49 states after the incident at Kent State, saying, that there is a silent majority,
Sure.
There is a silent majority that hates civil unrest. And
that was Nixon's argument. That's what he said.
And he was correct.
Well, I mean, it's funny. We haven't really determined whether it's majority since then. It's certainly roughly half. Certainly. And by the way, we're only talking about voters, right? So we're talking about, and when I say voters, I mean politically engaged people of any kind. So 10% of Americans, 20% of Americans read the news, something like that. So among those people, I don't know, meaning the people who are politically significant. Everybody else is just herd who just follows whatever clue they get. It's a small minority of Americans who are actually who are like us and the people who are watching this show. Yeah, we don't know. It's unclear. I mean this since Nixon's silent majority speech in 69, I think it was 68, 69. Anyway, somewhere around there. Since then, it's been unclear whether he was right that it's a majority. He was most certainly right that it is a substantial, important portion of the American population, no doubt. And I think it's somewhere around half. But we don't know. And that's kind of been the war that's been going on in some ways. But since then is to figure that out, right? So in the 70s, it sure looked like it wasn't true, because the 70s was by American standards, a basically pacifistic time. And then Jimmy Carter's elected, but, and is also quite liberal on social issues, even though he's a Baptist preacher.
Well, I mean, I think a Democrat was going to win. I think a Democrat was going to win regardless after the psyop that was Watergate. But
yeah, no, sure. Yeah. But I mean, again, it's not clear. I mean, the Obama years certainly made it unclear who the majority is. Is that really the silent majority? Dominating?
No, I think there's a center.
The 2010s, whatever it was.
I think Obama campaigned as a centrist in 08.
Yeah, but that's not silent majority.
I mean, that's the thing is like,
right.
Especially like immigration, for example, like
right.
It's only since 2020 that the Democrats have been openly for open borders in this way, that they've hedged their bets on that. But okay, there's some big things I want to get to. There's no limited time here.
Let's do it.
I guess that's all we're going to say about LA for now. Did you see? I wanted to say a little bit on foreign policy, just a little, that embassies are being emptied out everywhere within striking distance of Iran, and it looks like,
Oh yes, let's do this.
This is breaking news. Yeah,
this is truly. I was listening just 10 minutes before we started. Yeah, and I don't even know what just happened in the last hour. Boy, Um, so I mean, I get, so what we know is that there's been a flurry of activity by the Iranian government today, just today, like all of a sudden, and it's been of all kinds. It's been lots. So yeah, the evacuation of facilities. And then I don't know if you saw this. There's on Twitter, an Iranian, I think, government official posted a long tweet storm today, speaking on behalf of the Iranian government, I believe, saying, and this could either be a complete bluff or it could be the greatest intelligence coup in world history, saying that the Iranian government has received a cache of confidential, sensitive information about Israeli government officials, Israeli military sites. They have incriminating evidence from video camera footage in Knesset members' bedrooms and bathrooms, that they have evidence about, you know, sexual impropriety, that they, whatever, just that they have now received this massive, and this comes from Dropsite, by the way, today, Dropsite News, Ryan Grimm. It's the only place I've seen it. But anyway, yeah, so yes, there's something going on. And is Iran just crying wolf and saying that Israel's going to attack us and they're bullshitting? No, I mean, I don't know. Israel clearly has been intent on attacking Iran for 30 years now. And Netanyahu in particular for the last 20 years this has been his number one mission. And they have attacked Iran in various ways. They've assassinated nuclear scientists and they've bombed certain military facilities in Iran and killed Soleimani, their not just military commander, but kind of the George Patton of Iran. That's who Soleimani was. But now, yeah, I'm scared. I'm scared. I don't. And it looks also like Israel's doing this on their own, because all the signals we've been getting for about a week now, at least, is that Trump's not into it, doesn't want to do it. And in fact, is kind of fighting with Netanyahu over this. And my guess is Trump, in usual fashion, is just saying, okay, go ahead. I can't deal with this. I got too many other things going on. I've got tanks in DC and I've got Marines in LA and I've got to deal with, you know, Putin and Zelensky. So go, if you want to go bomb Iran. I think my guess is tonight, I wouldn't be surprised if the Israel Air Force bombs Iran. You know, that they've done it before. They've conducted assassinations. What was it, inside? They killed that Hamas leader inside the equivalent of the vice president's house in Iran.
Oh yeah, the drone strike.
Mossad, yeah, no, I think it was a bomb inside the house. They had planned. I mean, that's the Israeli version. I think that's probably, I don't know. Anyway, that, you know, whatever, they killed a guy inside the Iranian basically equivalent of the vice president's house. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Just everyone should know that Iran has military bunkers with missiles all underground across the country, dozens of them, with missiles, as far as we know, that are more than capable of reaching Tel Aviv. Well, we know this because they did. Oh, the Houthis today also, they hit Ben Gurion Airport again, didn't they? I didn't see the video, but I heard about this. The Houthis managed to get their missiles into Israel again and bombed the Ben Gurion Airport today. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was in coordination with Iran. If you're an Israeli and you have a dual passport, which I think we don't know because they won't release these numbers, but something like half or more of Israelis have a second passport. Go, leave, get on the plane, go, get out now, just leave. For those who don't have second passports, you need to change sides politically right now. You need to say, oh, Palestinians need to have civil rights like all other people, and they need to not be segregated, and they need to be allowed political self-determination, and we will grant them, my God, the vote and like civil rights, oh, wow. Yeah, amazing concept. But yeah, that's what you're going to do, or you're going to get annihilated. If not physically, politically, you will, because the entire world is against you now. You're a pariah. Everyone hates you. Go to any other country, you'll be at the very best suspected as being evil and a child killer. But every government in the world except for ours hates you. Great Britain is denouncing you. My gosh, you've lost France, they hate you. China hates you. Russia hates you. And almost everybody in the global south surrounding you hates you. You're killing children by the dozens every single day, and you're doing it at an even greater rate. They've killed 100 civilians in the last 24 hours. Just, when I see like 4-year-old girls with half their body blown off and their innards are just dangling. Yeah. And that's the 15,000th child, at least, that you've killed for this project of having an ethno-state. Fuck you. We're done. Get out. Leave. Yeah. And that's not anti-Semitic. That's pro-Semitic. I love Jewish people. And the only way to save them is to end the state of Israel as an ethno-state, to end the project of Zionism. This is the worst thing for Jews in history. It may end up being worse for Jews than it has been for Arabs in the long run. 30,000 Israelis have died since the founding. But I mean, what's coming now? When the entire world is against you, hates your guts. Israelis don't quite get this yet. They're so smug and arrogant. I don't think a lot of them get it. The American Israelis, which is like giant percentage of them, they get it because they understand like American feelings. But the Israelis, the ones who were born there, they don't get it. I've seen them speak a lot. They're so smug. It's like, guys, you can talk all you want about being the chosen people and about all your righteous, Holocaust justifications for killing children. You're missing. You're not reading the room. No one cares about that anymore. We all hate you because we all see you as baby killers, which it is. Not you, but the Zionist project is necessarily a baby killing project. Yeah, no, I think this is a turn. And if I say this to Israelis, I know in Israel, yeah, you should go. You should go. I mean, do whatever you can to leave. And if you can't leave, the only thing you can do is call for civil rights for Palestinians. There's your choice. I mean, seriously, that's where we are. Some of them didn't choose to be born in Israel. Like none of them chose to be born in Israel. Some of them chose to live in, some of them chose to move there. Like, I don't know what the percentage is, but a huge percentage. And I know so many of these people, Americans from Marin County and Orange County and Poughkeepsie, who chose as adults to go colonize this place and kick Palestinians out, and for these ridiculous, romantic, sentimental reasons that have nothing to do with anything. And if you want to make Jews safe, move them to the United States. America has always been the Zion. Zionists will even tell you this when they're unguarded, in their unguarded moments. They will admit, oh yeah, America, of course, that's where Jews have been the safest, always. Jews have always been safe here. More than safe here, always. We're going on 300 years now of Jews being completely safe and powerful and prosperous in this country. This is Zion. Leave Israel, come here if you want to be safe, if you want a safe Jewish homeland. I just can't stand it anymore. It's been day after day for the last several weeks now, after a year and a half of it, of just children dying and women dying and old people dying and young men dying, and just no. For what? For an ethno, so that we can preserve a Jewish ethno state in the middle of Arab land? When many people have been saying since the beginning of this project that it's a disastrous project that will only result in eternal war, yeah, leave, or call for equal rights for Palestinians. That's it. Anyway, my rant is over. You have the floor. Finish the show.
Relevant to this, did you see about the firings within the Trump administration?
No.
Especially in the NSC. I mean, Mike Waltz was famously fired, and then there was a big purge in the NSC. Marav Seren and Eric Traeger. And it seems like there's been a purging of pro-Israel voices in the State Department and in the Trump administration, and that there's this internal war between old boomer cons and the J.D. Vance crowd on the Iran issue. And yeah, that Trump has sort of thrown his hands up in the air and doesn't want to keep poking the bear that is Iran. So that's worth reporting on. A big piece, we were talking earlier about the riots. Did you see Academic Agent's video recently about the CRS? Have you heard about this?
No.
Have you heard of the CRS, the Community Relations Service?
No.
It is, so Academic Agent on Twitter read this book called American Peacemakers, the Community Relations Service and Civil Rights. Let me pull up the website for it. But it's this organization it's a bureaucracy written into the Civil Rights Act that has the same amount of clearance, confidentiality clearance, as the FBI. And it was done explicitly to further the civil rights agenda as a federal agency. And he looked into it, and like their agenda seemed to be explicit organizing for protests, media relations, basically trying to play down it was a federal bureaucracy explicitly aimed at toning down any possible white backlash to the civil rights movement. And so they would have agents in with the media. If something violent happened, they try to downplay the racial component of it, so there wouldn't be a backlash to it. They would help organize protests, different organizations. As the Black community has been well aware of for years, they'd promote the Martin Luther Kings, and they'd suppress the Malcolm X types. They'd go after divisive Black nationalists and be more towards the more pro-establishment voices. But this was a big reveal from Academic Agent. And it seems as though the Civil Rights Act had its own secret police that enforced the entire agenda from 64 to now. And this is getting a lot of traction, and people are speculating the dark money behind the protests happening now and certain media things. It's all speculation, but for example, the Austin Metcalf video, for example, we know it exists, but it's not being released to the public. And people notice that there's like an eerie silence or an eerie change of message oftentimes around, for example, Austin Metcalf's father. And that whenever there are these victims, they always sort of have this message of trying to keep things peaceful as possible and trying not to instigate any sort of racial grievance whenever there's a murder that goes a particular way.
So I didn't know about this agency. I'm not surprised that it exists. I am also quite sure it's had very limited effect.
Yeah,
I think this is probably grossly overplayed as to its importance. Should it be eliminated? Yeah, immediately. Like, yeah, this is an attempt at fascism. Okay, so I'm not underplaying it, I'm just saying it's unsuccessful. So here's the thing about as I said, I sort of mentioned earlier, the history of rioting in places like the Hood in America, and this goes back to, well, I mean, there's always been riots, but sort of urban riots, you know, the big urban riots, goes back to the 1910s. Every single what we would call black riot has been in response to one and only one thing. Not to politicians getting assassinated, not to politicians telling them to think this or that, not to community leaders or church leaders or anybody telling them anything. No one rioted in response to what Malcolm X said or Martin Luther King said or Frederick Douglass said or Marcus Garvey said. No one did. There's no riots in response to any words, political ideas, ever. Every single case, and there have been many, and a lot of these riots were huge and resulted in tens of people getting killed. Every single solitary one of them was in response to police brutality. I mean, Newark, Detroit, Watts, Harlem, LA in 92. And this current one, it's the same thing. They see this, people who live, and it's Mexicans, but they live in the Hood too. They see this as police brutality of a kind of a grander sort, in fact, because the blacks in the Detroit Hood didn't get deported from their homes and separated from their families. They were just maybe put in prison or whatever. I mean, I guess that is deportation, but they weren't at least removed from the country and they weren't put into Libyan prisons, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it is police brutality in my view. In other words, I think it's completely legitimate, especially for the 99% of them who are simply working at Home Depot, to see it that way. I can't imagine being a member of a family like that, a typical illegal immigrant family in this country, and not wanting to throw bricks into the windows of ICE cars because your dad just works at Home Depot. I mean, that's why he came here. And your mom is a housekeeper for these white people on the other side of town. That's why they came here. They make more, believe it or not, of course, from those shitty jobs than they do in Sonora. And by the way, another thing about, oh my God, Matt Walsh, like I just, if you don't travel outside the United States at all and you comment in a large public forum about other countries, about the cultures of other countries, about the conditions in other countries, just stop. Just stop. Dude wrote some ridiculously idiotic piece about Mexico saying, well, it's interesting that they all want to flee this hellhole. All these Mexicans, they want to come here. Must be a hellhole down there. Must tell us something about how terrible their country is. Bro, go to Mexico sometime. You'll probably want to move there pretty quickly. And I didn't know this until fairly recently when I was in Mexico and I had people tell me this, but it makes sense. And I've seen it is obvious when you're in Mexico. Basically, the immigrants to the United States are almost exclusively from the northern Mexican states, which are mostly desert, which are mostly impoverished, which are on the border with the United States so that the drug trade with the United States is the main industry, all of which means that the cartels have taken control of those places. And they're economically depressed, and they are already dependent on the United States in multiple ways. Those are the people. Poor people from northern states in Mexico are the vast bulk. You're not going to meet immigrants in the United States from Mexico City. You guys notice that? You ever notice that? Have you ever met a Mexican immigrant from Oaxaca? Do you know what Oaxaca is? That's the place where Americans are moving to. So the number of Americans moving to permanently Mexico is at its highest point ever. And it's huge. They're taking over whole towns in Mexico. And Oaxaca is one of them. Mexicans, if you go anywhere beneath those top northern Mexican states, no one wants to leave Mexico. It's not a thing. They don't want to move to the United States. It's so ridiculous. Most of Mexico is such a developed, incredibly culturally rich, like beyond belief, physically gorgeous place. I mean, it's awesome. And it's only like a notch below the United States economically. The roads in Mexico are far better. The roads in Mexico are like glass. They're so smooth. It's so ignorant and stupid and racist. It's just racist to make all these assumptions about this whole class of people based on nothing but your little stupid fantasies. Where does Matt Walsh sit in his fucking, where's his house in wherever, Virginia or whatever? Like, yeah, he doesn't know anything about nothing. Yeah, it's only poor people from the northern states of Mexico. I promise you, go to Mexico. Anybody, go to Mexico, go to any part, just go. And you'll see immediately this is all ridiculous. Even people in Acapulco don't go to Mexico, don't migrate to the United States. I mean, it's insane. It's so dumb. And Mexico and Mexican culture is not just attractive to me, it's attractive to millions and millions of Americans who want to live there. Not just me, but like retirees in Arizona are flocking to Mexico and loving it. We need a little more travel. We need a little more cosmopolitanism. We need a little more exposure to Black culture on the right. And once the right travels internationally, not the way Douglas Murray does, but like really travels internationally, and once they listen to Al Green and Marvin Gaye and Aretha Franklin and tell me that there's nothing good in Black culture, you know, if they do all those things, they tell me, oh yeah, all the world is shitholes and hellholes and Black culture is vacuous. And yeah, once they actually experience those things and tell me that, then I will listen to them. But they're all ridiculous, ignorant crackers until then. And they should be completely ignored on all questions of culture. Yeah, I'm a little done with the right wing. Sorry, Michael. I'm just a little done.
Yeah. No, I mean,
really done.
The sovereignty question about California.
Yeah.
So
it's Mexico.
Well, I mean, it should be Catholic Spain. I think that the Spanish Empire should. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I would say that that has more credibility.
Yeah.
Than my claim or the United States. Yeah.
I mean, the best of Mexican culture is just an echo of what was Catholic Spain. But
no,
so
it's a hybrid. It's a merge. It's a hybrid of indigenous and Spanish culture.
Yeah,
no,
yeah. It is. Right? It is a hybrid, but the good stuff is
I see.
Yeah.
Like mole.
Yeah,
not quite, dude.
But
Oaxacan mole is, my God.
There's an interesting sovereignty question here. A lot of there's a split on the right a little bit about. I think there's a uniformity now of opinion, but there's a split. Do you encourage California to secede? Do you give it back to Mexico? But do you stop worrying about sovereignty of California? Do you think it's too far gone, that it doesn't represent the interests of the United States? All it produces, are hostile leaders like Harris and Newsom and the worst kind of political machine and the worst cities and all that. That's one attitude. Or do you say, this is my birthright as an American, and we're going to send the Marines in to reclaim California and make it the land that gave us Nixon and Reagan and once more.
It's my birthright. I mean,
yeah,
that has always just made me crack up. I just think it's so funny.
Trump is being called Lincoln right now for the National Guard, and Victor Davis Hanson is calling Gavin Newsom Jefferson Davis, and he's calling Trump Lincoln.
Oh,
yeah,
that's a negative for. I'm just making sure.
Yeah,
Victor Davis,
I know.
For Victor Davis Hanson,
that's a negative. I know for us, it's positive, but yeah,
right. Oh boy, this is getting complicated. Yeah.
the Federalist case. Do you leave California alone? Do you let it rot, or do you reclaim it nationally?
Leave us alone. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Even California on its own is like a nation state.
I know California and Texas really are their own
bad
countries,
example because they're so giant and they have so much institutional power. I mean, if they let us keep the military bases, we could compete with most nation states. I mean, California, if they let us keep all the military assets that are here currently, I mean, I would think we could probably go to war with most countries on Earth and kill them. It's no joke. I mean, much of the Navy and Air Force and much of the Navy and Marines and Air Force are here, like large portions. Most of the Navy's here. So if we have the U.S. Navy, I think we're good. Like, I think we can kill most people. So sure, let's go. Now, the thing is, something like half of California is right-wing Republican.
That's the thing.
Right here where I live, I moved to the suburbs. It's all Trump people around here. Not all, but there's a large, it's majority Trump around here. Yeah, but no, of course, decentralization is the only salvation for humankind. And I've said this repeatedly. We decentralize. Every chance you get, break apart nation states so that they have less power individually. And I mean physical power, like military power. Like if California separates, yes, California will have this big military, but it'll be less than the U.S. military, and the U.S. military remaining will be less than it was before. And that is good. Fewer nuclear bombs is good. Fewer bomber jets is good. It's good. We want more countries, more states, more nation states, more city states, more communities with more sovereignties. I mean, and the United States, as it's currently configured, is the most absurd, globally lethal entity in human history. 350 million people, second largest country in population in the world, stretching from Miami to Alaska and from San Diego to Maine, containing every ethnicity on Earth, containing every religion, every language, and therefore almost every culture, most of the cultures on Earth, all in this place, containing every political ideology that's ever been invented. Someone in the United States holds it. And we're all supposed to be in the same nation state with the same military and the same commander-in-chief with the same national culture. And we're supposed to put our children in schools that teach them the same things from San Diego to Maine to Miami to Alaska. Really? And have all these weapons at the disposal of the commander-in-chief. And also 90% of us are illiterate and don't read the news and know nothing. And I'm not exaggerating. And they get to vote for the commander-in-chief who has his finger on the greatest nuclear arsenal in history. It's a catastrophe waiting to happen. I've been saying this about the United States and American democracy for a long time. I'm just every day, honestly, politically, my thing is not that I always think about politics, but pretty much every day I do think about, like, geez, at any moment, Americans can vote for somebody who's going to drop a nuclear bomb and kill everybody. Look around. I mean, that's the situation. So yes, decentralize. All we can do is break apart the powers, the military powers of the nation states as much as we can, and just limit. That's the only way we can limit the damage that they can do to us. They can kill fewer people. They can incarcerate fewer people. They can stop the migration of fewer people. People will have more choices about where to migrate. There will be competition among these individual entities. Some will offer better packages and better deals for migrants. Some won't, but we'll have a choice. Those of us who want to move around, you know? So yeah, let California go, let Texas go, let them all go. And then California needs to break up too. We need to have like at least 4 or 5 nation states in here within California itself. I mean, anybody who's from San Francisco and LA knows exactly what I'm talking about. Like, we have never felt like the same state with them.
Yeah, San Francisco and LA should be like Hong Kong or just sovereign city states and quarantined and sort of blocked off from the rest of us.
That's the beginning.
But yeah,
in Northern California, There's been was it called the Republic of Jefferson in Northern California, north of the Bay Area. I think it's still going on. They've been calling to secede because they hate San Francisco and they hate California politics. They want to be their own little thing.
Yeah.
Like up in the Redwoods, that area. Some of them trace their lineage back to the Californios, the original Spanish settlers of California, before the Mexicans, your people. Yeah, and so right, who wouldn't? I mean, they are kind of the most indigenous people here, actually. And so why shouldn't they have a separate state? And why wouldn't that be better for humankind? I think we need more super chats. We didn't get enough super chats, even if they're hostile.
Yeah.
But thank you, Posmo. That was useful for our bank account.
For our project.
I was mean. I was super mean, but I did.
I know. Man, I just don't know where to start with the immigration thing. I guess
we already started.
I know.
Where do you want? No,
to me, like the realm of acceptable discourse is 10 million deportations on the liberal side or 40 million on the conservative side. But
what does it matter what the number is? What matters is my life and how it's affected by those people. Mm-hmm. And so far, all I've seen is positive effect from illegal immigrants on my life. And I can go down the list. It's a huge list of what illegal immigrants have done for me. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that they've done it for all Americans, even those of us, even Americans who don't live in the big cities. I guarantee you it's enormous what we owe to these people, what they've done for us, and what they've done against me negatively for me. I can't think of anything.
Well, if you like these people,
too much.
Here's the thing. If you like these people, you need some sort of comprehensive reform to where the people who are here are seen as full citizens and members of the society, that they're not seen as like the second class thing. And perpetuating this illegal status in opposition to everybody who came here legally is only going to increase hostility. So there needs to be some sort of massive reckoning with the immigrant population here if there's going to be harmony, to where everybody feels like the people who are here fairly. But there's labor has always been anti-immigrant.
Organized labor.
Yeah. Housing.
Unions.
Yeah. Totally. But housing costs, people are reporting that ERs are being overrun with illegal immigrant populations.
Okay.
But
so limit the welfare state, or have greater barriers to access to it.
Here's the thing, though.
Don't let people who wait. It's really simple, guys. Don't let people who don't pay into it use it. Now, the thing is, some illegal immigrants do pay into it more than a lot of American citizens do, but that should be simple to determine. If you pay into the system, you should have access. If you don't, you shouldn't. Super simple. We can do that, especially nowadays with all the technology we have. We can figure that out. No problem. It's so dumb fucking simple.
Well, we're not okay. Yeah. That's the thing
Posmo thinks I'm rich. I like this. That Posmo thinks I'm rich. Okay. Yes. I've been living off a trust fund for my whole life, and this is why I podcast. You're right, dude. How did you figure me out? Michael knows I'm rich.
Yeah. Man.
There we go, Ethan. See, it's all about the super chats, guys. Now, would I be asking for super chats if I were rich? I don't think so. The U.S. is a pirate republic nation with almost no indigenous people. We have no claim strong enough to keep others out. I mean, so if you're operating within the conventional moral framework that Americans do, actually, right? If we use our own principles to evaluate the situation, yeah, Ethan, that's right. Like, this is my point. Like, our own ethical framework, it doesn't make any sense. Like these claims about keeping immigrants, people from Mexico out of here. What? Since when? Why is that border ours? And by the way, that border didn't really exist as an enforced thing until the 1960s, and that was Cesar Chavez and George Meany and the Democratic Party and Lyndon Johnson who did that. And that's another thing I need to write, is a piece about the left-wing history of immigration enforcement. Trump's a goddamn Democrat, as I've said. He's a liberal Democrat on this issue, on most issues, historically, actually. He just doesn't know it. And the left doesn't know it either.
We didn't get time to talk about Musk spurging out on Twitter, but I think that's appropriate because the whole thing has resolved within a week, and it seems that Musk and Trump are back into the fold. And the only thing that's happened is that,
yeah. I just real quick, I'm on Elon Musk. I mean, I don't know.
But it's literally been resolved. Like he's literally deleted the tweets and been brought to heel and wants to come back into the administration and work. Like it was just like a very immature episode, similar to what we had on Christmas when he was talking about the H-1B visas.
Speaking of illegal immigrants.
Yep.
No, Elon, right?
I saw a deport Elon bumper sticker the other day, and I couldn't tell if it was a liberal or conservative. I was like, yeah.
No, I don't want him deported either. But Elon is almost definitely an illegal immigrant. Almost definitely, or was almost definitely. He pretty much admitted it in an interview with his brother. He's admitted it a few times, but they've kind of like hemmed and hawed and joked about it. But yeah, no, he was an illegal immigrant. That's again, like the hypocrisy among these people is just it's not.
I don't think it's
no. The point to make is not, oh, you're a hypocrite and therefore you're a bad person and that's why you're wrong. The point to make is, oh wait, even Elon Musk had to cheat and break the rules and the law to get in here and serve our country in all these ways and build companies and do all this stuff that we all value, just like the guys who work at the brake shop. Like, just like the guys at Home Depot. Like, it's the economy needs, our economy has had a demand for those people, for the H-1B ones like Musk, and for the landscapers too. For various reasons, we need those people. We need those kinds of workers. There's a demand, or else they wouldn't have come. The market, and this is like, you know, libertarians have been saying this for a long time. I'm just taking it from them, but they're of course right. The market will determine the immigration flows. Nothing else will. People will not come here if there are no jobs here, guys. You understand this, right? It's like super simple. Like, if there are not jobs here for them, they will not come. They will not cross the border. They will not swim across the Rio Grande. They will not risk arrest from ICE. They will not risk being separated from their families for years. They will not risk getting deported to a foreign prison in Libya unless there's jobs here, unless there's money here, unless there's something to do here. It's so simple. So the market will always and always has basically, except when the state has intervened in various ways. But if you let the market go, if you remove the borders entirely, eliminate Border Patrol, abolish all immigration laws. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Just wipe it all out, meaning go back to pre-1965, pre-1924. But really 65, because they weren't really enforcing the border before 65, just in my lifetime. Literally, that's the year I was born. They didn't enforce the border before then. There was no Border Patrol on the Mexican border. You could walk right across, no problem, until then. If you just eliminate that whole thing, all immigration laws, complete and total open border, the market for jobs will determine how many people and who, by the way, immigrates here, because we're not going to hire MS-13 to be our housekeepers. We will see the tattoo on their forehead and we'll be like, yo, you shouldn't take care of our children. It's really simple, like super simple, local level, rational decisions being made all the time by housewives, by Americans of all kinds, about who we bring in to tend our yard, to drive our school bus, whatever the fuck it is. it's so obvious. Open borders is the only way. All right, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
But you get the last word because I talk too much.
Yeah. Another week of Pat Buchanan being vindicated. People are sharing clips of saying LA has turned into a place of racial conflict, and that's the future of America if you look onto it. So, but again, the don't bomb the third world and don't import the third world. Give everybody their own sovereignty. Limit,
which is a very, and that is so coherent and compelling and persuasive as a package. The question is just, how do you want to implement it? Do you want to implement it the way that Trump's doing it, or differently? But it's a beautiful. I completely endorse it too. It's like a paleoconservative position, which I adore. Yeah, you're right. It's very humane too. It results in many fewer people getting brutalized and killed. And so, but how do you implement it?
Yeah.
Do you bring in the Marines and the National Guard and arrest everybody and put them on buses and send them to prisons elsewhere?
I think that program is. I think the anti-protest stuff is overwhelmingly popular. I think, and there's a very, very loud, vocal minority of progressive activists that take up the space with their shrieking in the public sphere that are being ignored more and more. And I'm seeing their voices matter less. We'll see how the midterms play out. We'll see how everything plays out. But yeah, how do you implement it? You got to start somewhere. You just got to try. You just got to. You just got to.
Okay. Okay. Let me. No, I mean, yes. I think intellectually it's really, really coherent and compelling. Again, it's just about the practical implementation. But let me do something real quick here, and then we can do this. What I want. So we are gonna go to the after show, which is our amazing, hilarious, quite fun. Oops, sorry, I'm looking up the URL. So I'm going to make this.
Not doing this Patreon. Okay,
Substack. Yeah, no, it's Patreon. So yeah, so you have a choice, guys. You can either join Patreon, or you can join Substack, and it's the exact same price. So I'm going to send. Oh yeah, Michael, you have the.
Is it ThaddeusRussell.substack for this one?
Yep, but I'm going to put it in the. Let me see. Wait, hang on a second. Yeah, the URL. If you join up now, I'm going to put the URL in there right now. 8 o'clock. No, 7. Well, yeah. I apologize. Let's see. Everyone. Send to everyone. There we go. Boom. Okay, it's published. Perfect. Okay, all good. So yeah, if you become a member of Substack right now, for the exact same price as Patreon, you can have access to the amazing after show, which we're going to do right now. Michael and moi. And yeah, and that's what I recommend. So yes, Patreon's good for the moment, but we are transitioning to Substack. And if you also, well, the thing is, if you join Substack, you can cancel right now, Boris. You can cancel Patreon anytime you want and join Substack. The other thing about this is that Substack, it's not just, you don't just get access to the after show, you get the articles. We're going to start having interview podcasts, videos on there too. I'm restarting Unregistered on Substack soon. And then also very soon, all the Unregistered Academy courses will be on Substack as well. Not yet, but they're going to be uploaded now. But I have 6 articles already written. I've mentioned a few of them. And yeah, all of my operations and even Unreported will eventually move over there. Everything is moving to Substack, so you may as well get in now for the exact same price as Patreon. And in fact, for certain services, it's a lower price. So you get more, it's the same price or cheaper, and everything's moving there. So go to Substack right there. That's the URL, thaddeusrussell.substack.com. And I will and I will see you on the other side and at the after show. The URL is right there. It's the leading post. So click on that shit after you join up. And I'll see you in the Zoom room with Michael, and we're going to have a great time. It's the weekly Wednesday party. And
if somebody who's not supposed to be there has the link, we kick them out, right? That's how this works.
No, everybody's allowed.
Everybody's allowed.
Even haters are allowed.
No borders. No borders on our Zoom link.
Exactly. I'm an open borders. The thing is, I'm also a Christian, and I love everybody. So it's all good.
So come take my wife. That's what being a Christian is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or to a Morris. All right.
All right.
Peace, man. See you soon.
See you.
Bye.